49er faithful, how's everybody doing? Hope everyone is having a legendary week. We're going to go ahead, and this will be the last show before we get to the 2023 NFL draft. So we thought no better time to bring on a very special guest, a good friend of mine that I actually got to meet over at training camp a couple of years ago. But before we get started with all that, we're going to go ahead and remind everybody to help out Niner Faithful Radio by using our shop49ers.com affiliate link. Link will be in the description of this video or podcast. Go ahead and go to SeatGiant.com. Use the promo code Niner Faithful Radio to save on all your theater, concert, and sporting event tickets, as well as help out the show. Follow us on Facebook, at Instagram, and Tumblr at Niner Faithful Radio, and Twitter at Niner Faithful R. And to see everywhere you can subscribe to the show, go ahead and visit NinerFaithfulRadio.com/subscribe. And make sure you stay tuned to the end of the show to get your special 10% coupon code off of all season 2 for the Faithful by the Faithful apparel. Ladies and gentlemen, faithful of all ages, let's get the show cracking.
Weiss has just set a Super Bowl record with 12 catches. He's in motion. Montana, touchdown, John Taylor.
All right, everybody, what's cracking? We're going to go ahead and bring on Jordan in a second. But, oh, wow, I already got, what's up, First Take Nine? It's good to see you, baby. Roberto, good to see you, cracking. All right, everybody, we got a special guest, man who needs no introductions. If you are a Niner fan and you read Niner Nation, you know our special guest today, Mr. Jordan Elliott, a.k.a. Splash Cousins. Jordan, how you doing, brother?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. How you guys doing?
You know, I always say any day you wake up a 5-time champion is a legendary day. By the way, love the Sharks hat.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a rough year, but I'm hoping things are trending up. We'll see. But, it's been a rough couple of years, man.
You know who plays tonight, though, right? We released the Kraken.
Jason, they don't give a shit about that. You know, whatever. They don't give a shit about that. All right. So, I saw you on Larry's show. I was actually listening on my way home from work, and the running back. Now, so a little preference of asking you this question is, I kind of went on a little bit of a rant last show because I am tired of us third round running backs that aren't even on the team year 2 when we've been under the Lynn Shanahan era so long that we know what happens. We draft these running backs. We sign some running backs undrafted. The undrafted running backs end up being better. They make the team. A year later, the drafted running back is essentially cut. Now, I want to make sure I get the player's name right. It's the running back from Texas. Hold on, let me pour up the article right now.
Yeah, it's Roschon Johnson.
Roschon Johnson. There you go.
Yeah.
Why is he different?
I just think he's an NFL player, and when you're picking where the 49ers are picking, like they're not picking until 99 overall, barring any trades. That's where their first picks, currently slated to be. When you're in that range, the odds of getting a player who are going to be, an impact, Pro Bowl caliber player are extremely slim. But even getting a guy who's going to be on the team for the duration of a rookie deal, it's a lot harder than I think, common perception might look at it as. And to me, I'm just looking for guys who I think will be on the 49ers roster year in and year out for those 4 seasons. I too had some reservations about some of the running back picks they've spent the last couple years. It wasn't necessarily the player. It was more so like, trading up picks to get Trey Sermon. I didn't really like that at the time. I'll be honest. I didn't watch a ton of Ty Davis Price. I was a little surprised when they drafted him where they did. But to me, you have a guy in McCaffrey who's still in his prime when you look at how old he is, but when you look at the amount of touches he's had and the workload he's had, I think you want to make sure that you have some insurance there. And I think that Elijah Mitchell has been fantastic for them, but he's also had some injuries where it's like, hey, if that is something where it continues, you do need a more long-term solution. But even if it doesn't, you have Mitchell under contract for 2 more years. I think you need to start kind of overlapping those rookie running back deals. And so it really depends where you're at with the room they have now. I think they have 4 guys who are pretty solid that you can count on. But I also, when I'm looking at it, I'd rather add a 5th guy who I feel really good about, who I think could be an NFL caliber player for 5 to 7 years, rather than saying, hey, we don't need more running backs or we have enough running backs. Let's take a chance on a cornerback or a receiver who I wouldn't feel as confident in personally being on the roster long term. So it's really just about kind of taking the best player available. And I think if a guy like Roschon Johnson's still on the board at 99 or 101 or wherever they're picking, I would take him simply because I think his value as an NFL caliber player supersedes the positional value of him as a running back.
See, and that's my thing, is that's always been my argument, is if they're not on the roster a year later, 2 years later, then what was the point?
Yeah.
Now if you tell me, because I don't know about you. Matter of fact, we'll go ahead and ask that as a follow-up. I'm not looking at any real starters in this year's draft. This, to me, is as we transition from the beginning core of the Shanahan era and starting to replenish our roster over the players we've lost over free agents over the couple of years. I'm looking for maybe not a long-term plan, but a plan to eventually replace Trent Williams. I mean, even if they say, hey, this isn't our plan, it's a plan, just like how we took kicker. Getting some replacements of, I don't know how you feel about it, but I don't think Debo and Brandon Ayuk are sustainable long-term when you look about probably what we're going to have to pay both of them. So getting in some young, especially Juwan Jennings, only the last year of being an unrestricted free agent, he's going to, I think, have a breakout year. I think Juwan Jennings is going to get paid. Somebody, i.e. Kendrick Bourne. Besides him, what is your ultimate, if you said the San Francisco 49ers have to have a successful draft, for this has to happen?
They just need to get a couple players that can be contributors, whether it's special teams or just serving in a depth role right away. Where they're picking and given the state of their roster now, I don't really think there's an expectation, or there shouldn't be an expectation that they're drafting a guy who's going to come in and start right away. So I think just having some players who can kind of redshirt, for lack of a better term, just kind of learn the system, get used to the league without the pressure of having to play right away, I think would put him in a good spot. And we've seen guys in recent years that were taken in the middle rounds, like that. Deommodore Lenoir had to play a lot of snaps his rookie year. You see situations like that happen where even if that's not the plan on paper, things don't always go to plan in the NFL, and you might need to rely on those guys. So just having somebody who can step in, there's going to be growing pains, especially when you're taking guys who are, going to the middle end of the draft for, a number of reasons, but you're going to have growing pains. And as long as they can get guys who have the potential to step in without the lights being too bright and just kind of keeping whatever position they might have to fill in for afloat in the interim, I think that's a victory. But the problem is that we have seen them draft so many players in the, 3rd round, 5th round, 6th round, 7th round that have ended up panning out, that I think people just expect every year, like, oh, they're going to find somebody who's going to be really good. And while I think their the front office track record is really good, that can't be the expectation, because it's really, really hard to find guys. So ultimately, if you can find guys that are just quality depth players that can step in when needed, that's a major victory. Even if you don't come away with a long-term starter or a superstar player, I think the name of the game right now is just finding guys that can contribute and find a serviceable role on the roster.
I mean, to me, it's look, I mean, if a superstar comes from this draft, nobody's going to bitch and whine and complain about that. That's obviously the objective. But when we're in a new, I don't want to say era, because that word's just used so much, but a new mindset of the fact is we don't need superstar players. I think this obviously we have too many superstar players. We're probably going to have to, you obviously you saw some turnovers this year with Jimmy Ward leaving, literally the longest tenured Niner. So I fully agree to you. We have a couple questions. What are your thoughts about Zane Gonzalez as a kicker this year? I don't really have any. My mindset about kicker, Roberto, as you know, because you watch the show every week, is basically if you want to look for the 2024 49ers, ultimately replacing Robbie Gould needs to happen. If you're about winning now and, hey, let's focus on the 2023 Niners, go sign Robbie Gould. How do you feel about the kicker situation?
I just think that they're kind of, in the position they're in because it seems like they're not willing or there's reluctance on both ends to get a deal done with a guy like Robbie Gould. I think not just Robbie Gould, but, the years that Phil Dawson was here, the Niners have had 10 years straight pretty much of just really consistent kicking, really dependable kicking. And it's something that kind of flies under the radar because you never really realize how valuable it is until you don't have it, or you have a kicker out there who's missing kicks or, freezing up in crunch time. And
Jose Cortez.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have situations like that where it's like, okay, well, now we maybe took for granted all these times where we knew that 99% of the time when Robbie Gould goes out there, especially when you're kicking inside 40 yards, whether it's inside, outside, windy day, he's kicking on the frozen tundra in Green Bay. He was really dependable. And I think that's something where you get, I like what they did with Zane Gonzalez just because he is a veteran and he has NFL experience. I know a lot of people really like Jake Moody, the kicker out of Michigan, but drafting rookie kickers is really, really risky. I actually wrote an article about a month ago about it. There's been 17 kickers drafted in the last 10 years, and only one of them is currently on their second deal or second contract with the team that drafted them. There's been a few where they ended up being successful kickers, but they bounced around to a couple teams first. So there's a very, very small track record of a team finding a guy in the draft, bringing them in for training camp, and that player sticking with the team that drafted them and having the success with the team that drafted them. So the 49ers, based on that, kind of history, they could easily draft a guy this year. He ends up not making the roster for whatever reason, and then he ends up being a really good kicker for another team for 10 years. But to me, that's just not worth it given the precedent we've seen taking that risk when that's basically been how that's gone at that position with the exception of one or two players over the last decade.
Ultimately, I have felt like this is that, and this transitions to ultimately the quarterback position, is that Robbie Gould has been a valuable part of this team because, let's be real, the struggles of the Niners to score touchdowns in the red zone. And I think that the Niners, ultimately, if you looked at it and said, what's the best solution for the football team going forward, is re-signing Robbie Gould, who doesn't kick off. And let's be real, it's going to be 41. When is he going to hit his wall? Or score more touchdowns in the red zone. I think that Kyle would definitely point to the latter. So to me, if you're not going to sign Robbie and you tell us, hey, look, we'll go ahead, bite the bullet, pray to God that we don't have, games where we need 5 field goals, i.e. the Cry Girls game, or games that a missed kick is going to cost us a chance to compete for a championship, and, sign some undrafted kickers. We got, Gonzalez and everything, bring him in and let him compete. Jason, I know you, one more question for, we got in the comments, and then Jason had a question for you. Jordan, who is your ultimate draft crush?
It's hard. I have a few. Like, if you had to ask me for like one right now, it would be pretty difficult. There's a couple guys who I really do think could fall in the 49ers range, who I think would be great additions. I'm really big on Davis Allen, the tight end out of Clemson. I think he fits kind of what they're looking for, where they'll be picking. It seems like they really are keen on taking a tight end in this class, so I really like him. There's a couple defensive backs who I really like, kind of that are projected for now to go in the later rounds. Who knows how that'll actually go. I did a pretty in-depth interview with Jordan Howden from Minnesota. I really liked his game, and then when I got to talk to him one-on-one, get a sense of who he was as a person, how he studies, how he prepares, he's another guy I really like. I do also really like a couple corners who are kind of slated to go potentially where the Niners are picking. Darius Rush out of South Carolina is a guy who has really good length, really good speed. He tested in the I think it was like 95th percentile in both arm length, height, and 40 time for the position. So he's long, he's fast, has some traits that could be developed. So there's a handful of guys who I really like. It's not like the past years where I've had one or two guys where I'm like, this is, head and shoulders above everyone else. For whatever reason, I haven't really found that this year, but there are a handful of players who I've grown quite fond of the more I learn more about them, and I think would be great fits for the 49ers.
All right, Jason, shoot your question.
Hey, how you doing, Jordan? My question is, have you guys alluded to where we're mostly, for the most part, fine, top end with starters and stuff like that. With a third linebacker, we're not going to be using it majority of the time for mostly, we have McCray Ball, Flanagan Foles in there. They can field it, but we also have playing a lot of nickel with Elijah or Oliver or Hartfield in that position. Is there anybody in the draft that you like? Like for me, I like a Corey Price out of Purdue. I think you and Krug who had talked about Marty Mapu out of Sacramento State.
Mm-hmm.
There's also Troy Brown out of Ole Miss. Is there anybody that you were looking at that could field that hybrid style of play that we're probably going to be in those formations a lot on defense?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of those guys you mentioned are great. I think Marty Mapu is a really interesting name because he's playing, FCS ball at Sacramento State. So I don't think people got to watch him as much as maybe some of the local area scouts here did, or some people who, follow that program a little bit closely. A guy who I really like is D. Winters from TCU, and I think he's somebody who could kind of be – it's really hard to gauge whether he's going to be a DB or a linebacker. I think he does slot into that kind of similar role we saw with Fred Warner, where he didn't really have a defined position at BYU coming out, but he was able to excel at the next level. I thought he looked really good in that college football playoff game against Michigan too. So in it's one game, but in that environment, that high stress, tons on the line – I think those games are really revealing about what you can expect from a player at the next level. So he's probably the guy that I would say I most closely look at for that role. But I also think there's a lot of guys who are kind of box safeties where the 49ers might feel comfortable, not necessarily slotting a guy into a linebacker role, but kind of just having three safeties on the field. I think there's a situation where you could have a guy they bring in paired with Huff and having them both play in the box with Gibson as the deep safety. So they have a lot of options on the table, but I think a couple of the guys you mentioned are really good as well. But Mapu would probably be the guy that I think fits that bill the most. If you designed what you're looking for in that role, he would definitely be one who fits the mold.
Do you think anybody on the roster would excel at that? Oh.
I was just saying, almost like the type of role that they did, I believe it was 2017, they did that with Eric Reed, where he's like a hybrid linebacker safety type of role. I want to say it was 2017 that we did it with Eric Reed. But sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, for that role, who do you think most resembles something like that who could start and play at a high level next year?
I've been a big Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles fan for a while. I think he's flashed some really impressive things on tape when he's had the chance to get on the field. He has that background. It'd be him or Marcelino McCrary-Ball. I think Flanagan-Fowles has a bit of, I don't want to say an edge because we don't really know for sure how it's going to pan out when they get on the field again this year, but I think he definitely has maybe a leg up would be the right word, just because he has more experience in the defense, more experience in the league. But I definitely think one of those two guys would fit the mold of what we've seen with that, converted linebacker history as a DB. They're really comfortable in space because they have that experience playing defensive back. And just the way the 49ers have identified that blueprint and really locked in on getting value for guys where, because they don't really have a defined position, or teams may not see them as a safety at the next level and don't have that same vision to kind of kick them down closer to the line of scrimmage. They've been able to get some really, really talented players because of that. Obviously, most notably are Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner, who arguably are the best linebacker tandem in football. Both of those guys have that background as DBs, and you can see it when they're moving in space and when they get caught on an island with a guy. That's not something that's foreign to them when they're 15, 20 yards upfield, because they've been there, they've done that. And I think having that experience is really valuable. So if it's any guys on the roster now, I think it would have to start with DFF and McCrary-Ball. I think both of those guys have a lot of upside, and it seems like for now, Oren Burks is going to be that third linebacker, but I think that they are in a spot where they have 5 guys potentially that'll make the roster that they'll feel really good about at that position.
Awesome. Now, we've kind of buried it 20 minutes in because I have a feeling that this is going to be a little in-depth conversation. Where actually, it's funny because where I left off in your show with Krug was when you started talking about Brock, and he was breaking down the video he did where he was talking about the passer rating where I think it was against the blitz, when not blitz, where Purdy ranked last year. Do you think Trey Lance is on this roster at the conclusion of the draft?
I think so. I can't sit here and pretend like I know one way or the other, or I've been asking people or what. Like, I just based off the cost it would cost a lot to move him financially. They're going to eat a big dead cap hit if they move him, and Trey Lance could end up. Yeah, and he could end up being a really good quarterback. He might not. None of us really know, and other teams that would be acquiring him especially don't know because there's such a limited sample size. They'd basically be going off of, rumors and, firsthand accounts of, all these people in the league are plugged in with each other, coaches, scouts, front office people. They talk about these kind of things. I'm sure that they could ask, and there's been plenty of coaches that are no longer with the 49ers who maybe wouldn't be as tight-lipped about their, whether they're really high on Trey Lance or really low. They don't have that obligation to be as tight-lipped because they're not with the team anymore. So other teams have a good idea of who he is, but they don't know for sure. And they absolutely don't have the game, film to fall back on outside of 4 games, which is, in my opinion, way too small of a sample to be feeling super strongly either way. So when you think about, like, let's say a team offers him like a 4th round pick or 3rd round pick or whatever it may be, is that really worth eating the dead money you're going to have to eat? And the only way, in my eyes, it would be is if the 49ers are completely out and they're just like, you know what, we're going to cut ties here. We think it's best for us to move on. And if they genuinely, as much as it's a business, if they genuinely wanted to do right by Trey Lance and be like, hey, if your future's not going to be here, we're not going to hold you back any longer than we need to. Let's get you into a fresh environment, a fresh start, and cut our losses. And I just have a hard time seeing them basically admitting, like, I don't know if admitting defeat's the right word, but you basically would be punting on a guy that you mortgaged 3 first-round picks for. Everybody's always like, oh, they only traded 2 of them. Well, they invested 3 first-round picks into the guy because even with the pick swap, they spent that pick on him. Yeah. So to me, it would be very unlike the 49ers to just kind of wave the white flag and be like, you know what, this is over. This experiment's done. I don't think we've seen enough. I get the feeling they haven't seen enough. Even if they like Brock Purdy more, which it sounds like for that starting position, that's where they're kind of leaning. I don't think that means that they don't like Trey Lance. And that's kind of the issue with this discussion, guys, is that it seems like if you acknowledge that they may like one guy, people make that seem like it means you have to dislike the other. And I think the 49ers are in a spot where they're like, we know our roster is really good. We know we have talent everywhere. And if it wasn't for horrific injury luck, we probably were in the Super Bowl and might have had a chance to win it last year. So when you hear these things about having 3 quarterbacks we really like or having multiple quarterbacks that we really like, I don't think that's just fluff or just PR or just, coach speak I think they genuinely mean it. Like, they're literally just like, hey, we need a guy who can step in and not ruin this for the other 52 guys who are really talented on this roster. And I think they have 3 guys right now who they believe can do it. So I would say no. I apologize for the long answer, but I would say no. I don't think he gets traded.
That's the right answer.
I mean, ultimately, this is my thing. And we'll get to the obvious follow-up question here. But the thing about it is you have to look at it from layers here. The only year we did not have multiple quarterbacks play for us under the Shanahan era is 2019. Every year, multiple quarterbacks have lined up under center, especially last year. So how could you come off of last year, which I was sitting in this very room, right behind me, with the bottle of tequila that's right behind me, drowning my sorrows? How could you have that happen? Then you have to look at Trey himself. What have you seen that from the moment you drafted him and decided to take him number 3 overall to now that make you all of a sudden feel that what you saw is not there? You can't because you haven't seen enough sample size. And I think when a lot of this discussion that doesn't, I'm a firm believer of if you work hard enough at something, you only get better. So I think a lot of this discussion is based off of the assumption that Trey can't get better. The Trey didn't study his playbook. The Trey didn't work on his arm mechanics. The Trey didn't work on his throwing motion. And I'm not saying he didn't fix all these things, but I mean, what the hell do you think he's been doing? I understand there's only so much you can do when you're foot in a cast, but I mean, do you think he's been sitting there playing Madden all day? You know, I mean, I'm pretty sure the man's been busting his ass. And also, love Brock Purdy. Jason and I were there. Jason's first game at Levi's when he came in Miami. He was there. I remember the play that you broke down with Larry. I remember that exact same play. It was to Kittle under the 2-minute warning. And I said, that's not a rookie. I looked at Jason. I said, that's not a rookie throw, bro. A rookie does not process this that quick to be able to get the ball out on time, hit Kittle in stride for the first down, and not only that, on the ball. Just you know, we're on it. We're in 2 minutes. Let's go, and everything's going on, and that just doesn't happen for a rookie. With all that said, it was 7 games. We haven't seen him play a team besides the Seahawks, which, let's be real, we are a way better team than. We haven't seen him play a team twice. You know, so to sit here and proclaim that Brock Purdy's the starter is, I mean, obvious, but I don't think it's set in stone in the sense that there's nothing that can be done about it. You know, we don't even know if he's coming back healthy. So to me, what quarterback are you getting in the draft right now that at the very least knows your offense better than Trey Lance? You're not. You're not getting a quarterback that could go operate a practice at the level that Kyle Shanahan expects from his quarterback during training camp this year. You're not drafting a quarterback. So at the very minimum, I don't see. I'm the type of person that says you could trade whoever you want, but you better get better. And I just don't see somebody that I've had this quarterback in my building. I know his worth ethics. He knows his teammates. We know the type of person he is. He fits in our culture. All those type of things. You're not getting somebody better than Trey Lance in this draft. Now, with that said, ultimately the question is, Jordan, do you draft a quarterback this year?
I mean, it's kind of a vague answer, but I think it just kind of depends where you're at on the board. If there's a guy that you really like that's maybe falling a little bit, and you have a 5th round pick or one of the 6th round, you know, something in that range where so first of all, I don't think they should with one of their 3rd round picks unless they're really planning on moving on from Trey Lance. It would make no sense to roster 4 and take a guy that high. I just don't. So even if you're
out on DTR,
I really like DTR, but I think the only logical reason to spend a pick on DTR that high would be if they were moving one of the 3 that they already have. Okay. And
I agree.
From everything we're hearing or seeing or whatever, the speculation is that it would be Lance before the other guys. So unless you're really committed to doing that, I wouldn't. But I've watched Tanner McKee throw in person a few times. I watched him play at Stanford, and then I went to his pro day and as well as the local pro day. He's got a really live arm. He's got really good size for the position. Everything you hear about the guy is, great reputation off the field, good leader, not somebody who's going to come in and, cause distractions or get in trouble off the field. So if he's a guy who's still falling for whatever reason and he's there late, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I think you can make the argument that teams should draft quarterbacks every single year because, I've been watching Brock Purdy for a few years. I'll be honest. I thought that he'd be a high-level backup that would be somebody that could step in occasionally if you needed it. I never expected him to play as well as he did. And I think that's a good reminder that, right now they might draft a quarterback you might not get super excited about. How many people were really that excited about Purdy with the last pick of the draft last year?
I had no idea who he was.
I did.
Jason legitimately, he was on Brock Purdy. He was on Brock Purdy.
my wife's from Iowa, so I watch a lot of Iowa State and Iowa football. So I actually knew who he was, and I'm like, this kid could actually be a decent quarterback in the NFL. I didn't think he'd come in like he did, but I did think he could play at the NFL level.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was at, Jason. I was like, you know what, this is a guy who, could spot start for you. Again, would be a dependable backup. I didn't think he'd be a guy who came in from day one and just had, command and, and there's a good reminder, whether you're media or fans or whoever it may be doing this pre-draft stuff and watching tape. We can watch all the tape in the world we want on guys, but you really don't get a sense of who a guy is until you have a chance to sit down with them, hear from some of their coaches, hear from some of the people we've been around or they've been around. And, that's one reason for me where I try to, not speak in definitives ever, but especially with draft stuff, because a guy can look fantastic on film, but until you get the sense of who they are as a person, it's really hard to wonder how they'll translate. And I think with Brock Purdy, he did so many things behind the scenes, whether it was being a leader, studying, really prepping, getting the game plan down, like all the little things that go into being a quarterback that, on their own may not seem like a huge deal, but when you put the whole package together, it makes the difference between the guys who last and the guys who don't. The 49ers and other teams probably had a much better sense of that than maybe fans did based on watching him play or watching game film. So I think that's just something to keep in mind whenever there are these selections or there is this pre-draft talk, is maybe there's more to it behind the scenes that we're not seeing, because you can watch a prospect and be like, man, I really wasn't blown away. But then when you hear about all the things they're doing that we don't get to see, it then kind of paints the full picture as to why a team might like them as much as they do.
I mean, the ultimate thing I like to point back to is Jordan, having had a few discussions with me at training camp, I'm a Niner historian, bro. I love learning about Niner history. And the story I always point to was that Joe Montana's rookie year, he walked in, he was a skinny leg kid with a Fu Manchu. And I believe it was Eddie D. He had met, Eddie D and everything and said, hello, Mr. Barlow. And he said, I thought he was a kicker. And he said, no, I'm the quarterback out of Notre Dame. And he had gone to spoke to Eddie, because as we all know, Eddie went to Notre Dame. And he said, oh, my God, I think we're in trouble. And, of course, as we all know, Joe Montana ends up being Joe Montana. Tom Brady, biggest example. A cool little story I always get a kick out of this is I bought this Niner, the 50th year, I bought this book. Or I jacked it from the library or something like that. But I have this book, and the Ford was written by Tom Brady. He was speaking about being at the catch game and everything like that. And I actually got to show Mr. Brady one time. He was doing a thingy at the women's shelter or whatever like that and everything. But yeah, anyway, last question we have. We don't want to take up too much of your time, Jordan. Ultimate, as of this point in the offseason, not draft anything, do you think this football team right here has legit shot to compete for number 6?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the quarterback position being unsettled is the only real issue. And, in football, you can't ignore that. It's the most important position in the sport, but they're so good everywhere else. It's really hard to count them out against anybody. And you don't want to ever take anything away from guys at an individual level, but Shanahan's proven that the scheme will do a lot of the work for this offense, and they don't need a guy to come in and be Patrick Mahomes. Hey, if you get a Patrick Mahomes kind of player, nobody's going to complain, right? But they just need somebody who can come in, execute the offense, do the things we saw Brock Purdy do down the stretch. And like I said, I think they have 3 guys who have the potential to do that, and I think that they have some insurance if, that terrible injury luck they've had, unfortunately, would, continue into this season. They have some guys who could step in if they need it. So I know as of now, the odds are really with them. I think they are the second highest favorite to win the Super Bowl in a lot of sports books right now. I know Caesars had them number 2, with Kansas City being the only team in front of them. Yeah. And I think that's just reflective of where the books are at with how just talented the team is overall. And again, I know it sucks when the quarterback position's in flux, but when you think about Trent Williams, one of the greatest offensive linemen to ever play, arguably the best left tackle of all time, most gifted left tackle of all time, Fred Warner, who's one of the most unique defensive players we've ever seen with the ability to play the linebacker position, cover the way he does. Nick Bosa is the reigning defensive player of the year. Debo's an all-pro. Kittle's an all-pro. Ayuk has the potential to be an all-pro. Christian McCaffrey is arguably the best running back in the league. Like, everywhere you look, this team is just loaded with talented players. And, we could spend 10 minutes listing them off. I apologize for anybody I didn't mention. Yeah. It's just they have so many guys that they can match up with anybody. They just really need somebody to come in and steer the ship, is that the kind of the analogy I use. And I think Purdy, Lance, Darnold, any of the three are capable of doing it. It's just a matter of figuring out who's going to get that kind of first shift, on the job, and who's going to be the guy going into week one. Because I don't think that necessarily means they'll be the guy throughout the whole season. But I think that as of now, if Purdy's healthy, it feels like that's kind of the direction they're leaning. And in the games he started and finished, they never lost. So it's kind of hard to feel, not be optimistic about their chances this year.
I mean, I think it was Jason and I were talking a few weeks ago, and obviously if you get a Patrick Mahomes, you sign him, you don't ever let him leave your building. I have a cousin that will swear to God that the Niners cost themselves by a couple of championships by getting rid of Joe Montana. He'll go to his grave saying that. He'll never change his mind. I think I don't want to say revolutionize, but you can't argue with results when you look at 2019, healthy quarterback, one pass away from winning the Super Bowl, which ultimately I do blame that Super Bowl on the defense because, hey, don't give up 21 unanswered points. 2020, what was the main factor of missing the playoffs that year? I don't know. Maybe our quarterback missing half the games. And then you add in George Kittle and Nick Bosa going out week 2, all that. 2021, healthy-ish quarterback, and Deebo Samuel just proves that he's one of the best players in the NFL. And then 2022, I would say healthy. Well, I wouldn't say healthy, but comparable quarterback play in the sense that you got 2 games from Trey, which, let's be real, we would have still beat the Seahawks even if Jimmy didn't come in. Jimmy playing probably definitely the best football he had since those 5-game stretch in 2019. And then Brock Purdy, I don't want to take away from what he did because it was obviously phenomenal and he might end up being the best Mr. Irrelevant of all time. But it wasn't like you explained that Josh Allen throw where, you're throwing halfway across the field off of 1 foot. That's not how Brock Purdy wins. He just wins by simply executing and doing what Kyle says. But Bill Walsh used to say, if I could get players to do everything they said, I could script a whole game. And that's what you've seen with Kyle. And so ultimately, I think it's not so much, it's the ultimate. If you told me the number one most important thing, I would think for the success of the Niners this year would be Kyle being able to translate what's in his brain and, how he envisions it on the field to the quarterback who's going to then execute that. If Sam Darnold can do that, Sam Darnold will be the starter. God bless him. Brock Purdy can do that, which we've seen him do that. God bless him. And ultimately, I think Trey would be probably the one that you would want just because of the potential. He has the highest ceiling. But I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be one quarterback. I think ultimately we're going to see all 3 play this year.
Could pan out that way. And, at the end of the day, it's really hard to envision unless they're playing one of the, upper echelon teams in the league. It's really hard to not feel confident week to week, thinking that this team could take anybody. And even then, we never really got to see how it would have panned out. I like their chances against Philadelphia. I'm not saying they would have won, but I don't think that it's fair to just be like, oh, they would have lost either way. It would have been a really good game. And just as a fan of the sport of football who loves the game and loves watching it be played at the highest level, feels like we all kind of got cheated out of what would have been a really, really good matchup between 2 really good teams. And I just hope that next year, whatever the conclusion may be, if they fall short, I hope it's just because the other team happened to be better that day. And it wasn't because just a historically bad injury luck. That would just be an absolute bummer to have to, be left with the what ifs again.
To me, it is beyond just like you said, obviously We're not hiding it. We're all Niner fans here. Love the Niners and everything. But as somebody, even my fiance, who would tell you, like she would tell you, I want them to win because him, of me, But she was sad because of me. She knew I was heartbroken. But even my girl being like, I want to just watch an entertaining football game was like that was. I mean, she was on the computer playing Sims by, the third play of the second half. She was on her computer playing Sims. If they don't allow that third quarterback rule, I mean, to me, there's only 2 football games going on that day, and to have one basically be a non-game and have all but maybe Philadelphia and sprinkles of the Bay Area, because you have sick people like me who love to torture themselves, to have the NFC Championship game be essentially a scrimmage from a business aspect, that can't happen. They have to add the third quarterback rule. Jordan, before we let you go out, let the people know where they can find your lovely work and where you're at on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I write for Niners Nation pretty much every day. So if you head over to NinersNation.com, it's not just me. There's a ton of great people there doing great stuff. Content. Yeah, Kyle's fantastic. Every day there's new stuff coming out. A lot of different angles, a lot of different opinions. That's one thing that's cool is we all don't agree on everything there. So you're not going to get the same voice or view on a given topic from the variety of people that we have writing there. And there's, just a ton of great content. I'm sure any kind of thing you're looking for as a 49ers fan, you can find there. I have my Twitter's at @splash_cousin. I don't use it as much as I used to for strictly 49ers stuff, especially now. I'm a Bay Area guy, as you can see by the Sharks hat. I'm a big Warriors fan too. So you'll probably see me tweeting about the NHL and NBA playoffs more than I would say more than, but just about as equal as 49ers stuff right now. So I apologize. And I always like to give that forewarning for anybody expecting just hard-hitting analysis all the time. A lot of it's just me goofing off, watching my other teams. So
I get it. But yeah, definitely. Thank you for coming on. Definitely owe you a beer. I got season tickets now, bro. So
yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah. So we'll definitely be home opener. We'll go grab a brew or camp. Maybe even just camp.
Yeah, sounds good, dude.
All right. Thanks so much, Jordan.
Yeah, no worries. I love the shirt, by the way, Jason. I'm a big Hawaiian shirt guy, so always got to shout it out when I see it.
When I go down there for the Miami game, and there's shorts that go with this. Everybody loves that.
I was about to say you should have seen the fit he was rocking in the Miami game. You know what, Jason? We got to get you down for camp. Jordan will tell you the view isn't necessarily the greatest at Niner camp, unless you're on the sideline.
I should just show up to this at Seahawks camp because I live up in Seattle.
There you go.
So
okay.
There you go. Maybe we should go up there for Chicago camp. That'd be fun. All right, bro. So we'll definitely try to get you on throughout the offseason.
Yeah, let me know anytime, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jason. Any last thoughts?
No, I'm kind of excited to hear what he thought. I loved hearing that he's also pretty high on Marte Mapu and Corey Price, like I am, with those guys playing that hybrid position. So it's good to get somebody who's more on the inside getting the same opinions that we've got going with there. Yeah, it's good stuff. Like I said, next week, this time next week. Well, no, we won't be on this week because we'll be doing draft stuff. So yeah,
Jason,
we'll be doing the first round. If it's a big if, we'll have it set up to one of us will probably jump on seconds after that announcement. The 49ers have traded into the first round. If not both of us at the same time, kind of. We should probably just put it up.
And I'm going to say this. Let's be real. If it's a first round pick, Brandon Ayuk got traded.
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah,
so it's probably going to be followed on by a lot of cussing. Because I'm going to be pretty hot.
Yeah.
There's nobody I see worth Brandon Ayuk. No. Anyway. But yeah. So we'll definitely do that. We will have it. So we will be live Friday. By Friday, we'll figure out what we're doing Saturday. Might not do. Even if we do Saturday, I'm not doing round 7. I don't know.
I might, like I said, it depends. I'll have to see what we're doing, but I might just sit here all day and putz around, play video games on my computer, and watch, and just see how that goes all day. So that might that doesn't sound like that bad of an idea now I think about it.
Yeah,
What's up?
I got MLB The Show. I done it through 2 perfect games. Oh yeah, it's awesome. Anyway, made myself into the character. Anyway, but yeah, so we will definitely be live Friday though.
Yeah, for
Jason will
sure.
be starting it. I'll be hopping in. We'll see if we can get Jamie.
I'll probably start about
media.
15, 20 minutes prior. Go do a rundown of what happened the first day, if anything crazy. And
and
side
I'm
note,
hopping in, changing, and I'll hop right back on.
Side note, that has nothing to do with Niner stuff, but did you see that DeMar Hamlin has been cleared to play next year?
Yes.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. I just thought that was pretty freaking cool.
That's definitely not Niner news. Definitely not Niner news, but I mean
that story transcends.
That's one of the scariest shit I've ever seen on the football field, bro.
Yeah, like I don't think there's anything else scarier unless it was like your kid, family member type thing.
Yeah, like that's just. We all love this game. Anybody who plays it has a warrior mentality, but and I don't. Yeah, all right, we'll get media on. Media will hop on Friday. We'll go ahead. I'll shoot you the link when we make it. I'll make it tonight or tomorrow or something like that. I'll make a link for the show and everything, and for next Friday. Or yeah, that's next Friday, so I can make it next week. But I'll shoot it to you, media. We'll go ahead and get you on. Any final thoughts, Jason?
No, that's it, gang. Just can't wait till the draft for next week. Let's see what disguise or blessings we get out of this. It's always a fun thing. It's like Christmas. Can't wait. This is the Christmas for 49er fan, or for just football fans in general, because you get to open up brand new presents and new players and see what you got.
Ultimately, hopefully there'll be a draft cap purchased for Friday's show with a little special thing into it. I'm gonna see if I can get that this week. But I'm getting the red one. I want the red one. But so yeah, we'll do that. We'll have a great show for you Friday. I can't wait. I'm super excited. And also after the draft, we're only a few weeks from we'll be doing a special show for State of the Franchise, because I'll be in the VIP section this year as a season ticket holder. Super excited about that. And then we'll have a schedule release. And that's really when that game, that Philadelphia game is gonna be circled, bro. I can't wait.
Telling you, man, you gotta come up to Seattle.
You know what? If Bubby has their way, if Bubby and my best friend have their way, actually that might ultimately be what decides it. Like you, me, and White Boy up in Seattle, raising hell. I kind of like the idea of that.
All right, crash at my house. We're good. There
you go. All right, Brett. We'll catch you Friday.
Deuces.
Yay. All right. Well, we'd like to thank Jordan and Jason for coming on today's show. I will go ahead and put the link to all Jordan's Niner articles available at Niner Nation. The link will be in the description of the podcast or video. Before we get out of here, we have to remind everybody to help out Niner Faithful Radio by using our shop49ers.com affiliate link. Link will be available in the description of the podcast or video. Go to SeatGiant.com. Use the promo code Niner Faithful Radio to get all your theater, concert, and sporting event tickets, as well as help out the show. Follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr at Niner Faithful Radio, and Twitter at Niner Faithful R. To see everywhere you can subscribe to the show, go ahead and visit NinerFaithfulRadio.com/subscribe. And the special coupon code for 10% off for the Faithful by the Faithful Season 2 apparel is the New Hope. We shall see y'all round 2 of the NFL draft next Friday. Till then, faith, love, and happiness. Go Niners.
Weiss has just set a Super Bowl record with 12 catches. He's in motion. Montana. Touchdown, John Taylor.
See ya.